So you want to own a liquor store. You have stood in that aisle. Bottles floor to ceiling. A cooler humming in the back. Someone walks up with a 12-pack and a fifth of something dark, pays, and leaves in under 2 minutes. No spoilage on the shelf. No trend risk. People do not stop drinking in a recession. You look at that and you think one thing. This is the simplest retail business in America. And you are half right. The retail part really is that simple. It is also, on its own, not very profitable. Net margins on the actual bottles run somewhere between 3 and 9%. A grocery store does better. So why do people pay $600,000 for a liquor store in a strip mall that nets $150,000 a year? Because in a lot of America, you are not really buying a store. You are buying a government-issued scarcity certificate that happens to have a building attached. Here is the reframe that explains this entire industry. A liquor store is two businesses stapled together. One sells bottles for a thin margin. The other owns a license that the government has decided almost nobody else is allowed to have. Most buyers only ever price the first business. The second one is where the real money sits. So let us build one properly. What the license costs, what the bottles actually earn, and where that second business hides in plain sight. Then the part nobody explains until you have already signed the lease. Because the same scarcity that makes the license valuable also makes theft the single most dangerous line item on your income statement. Start with scale, because this is a genuinely large industry hiding behind small storefronts. American beer, wine and liquor stores report nearly $6 billion in monthly retail sales, and the sector has grown steadily for decades, recession or not. That stability is exactly why the license became worth fighting over in the first place. Demand for the underlying product almost start with the split that decides everything before you even pick a location. America has two completely different systems, and which one you are standing in changes the entire business. In 17 control states, the government itself is the wholesaler, and sometimes the retailer, of spirits. Pennsylvania, Utah, Virginia, and others. In those states, you often cannot simply open a private liquor store selling hard alcohol at all. The state runs that part of the business itself. In the remaining licensed states, private operators compete, but many of those states cap how many licenses can exist. New Jersey stopped issuing new consumption licenses in 1947. It never restarted. Existing licenses there now trade for $200,000 to over $1 million, and that money goes to the previous holder, not to the state. Florida issues one quota license for roughly every 7,500 residents in a county. When a county fills up, the only door in is buying someone else's license. Compare that to an open state like Missouri, where a license runs a few $100s because supply simply is not capped. Even inside a single control state, the categories fracture while reserving spirits entirely for state-run stores. So the same building might sell you a 30% margin on wine, and legally cannot sell you a bottle of vodka at all. Same business. Same shelves. Same bottles. State legislatures know exactly what this scarcity is worth to existing holders, which is part of why quota caps rarely get loosened, even when demand for new stores is obvious. Every existing license holder in that county has a direct financial interest in the cap staying exactly where it is. Now the ticket price, assuming you clear the licensing hurdle. A lean neighborhood store, in a cheap state, with a modest license, can open for $50,000 to $100,000 total. A well-stocked mid-size store, in a quota state, pushes past $250,000 before the first. Inventory alone typically runs $80,000 to $300,000 at cost, sitting on shelves as pure cash that has not sold yet. Refrigeration for beer and wine runs continuously. Every hour the store is open and every hour it is closed, and that alone becomes one of the largest fixed utility costs in the building. And then there is the license itself, and this is where quota states turn a small business purchase into something closer to buying real estate. Actual transfer prices from state filings tell the In Indiana, a single county's public transfer report showed sales from $10,000 in one small town up to a full $1 million in another, for the same category of license, in the same state, within months of each other. One publicly traded company's own financial filings show it carrying 15 quota liquor licenses on its books. $822,000 in accounting value. And paying nearly $200,000 for a single additional license that same year, just to open one more store. Read what that means. A company was willing to spend as much on the right to sell alcohol as many people spend on the store itself. And that same company reports these licenses on its books the way it reports land, not the way it reports a truck or a cash register. Assets that depreciate get written down every year. Assets that do not are simply held, tested occasionally for impairment, and otherwise left alone to sit on the balance sheet at whatever they are worth. Now the invisible machine, because once you separate these two businesses, brokers in this industry describe the split openly. The license alone can represent 10 to 30% of a total sale price in a normal market. In a moratorium market, where the county has stopped issuing new licenses entirely, license value can climb to 40 or 60% of what you are paying for the whole business. Meaning in the tightest markets, you can be paying more for the government's permission slip than for the building, the brand, the customer relationships and every bottle on every shelf combined. And that asset behaves nothing like the inventory sitting next to it. Inventory depreciates, spoils in slow categories, and turns over constantly. The license does the opposite. It is legally described, in some company filings, as an indefinite-lived asset. It does not wear out. It does not expire from use. It just sits there, worth whatever the next buyer who cannot get one any other way is willing to pay. If this breakdown is useful, subscribe. Now the part that makes the operating business itself far riskier than the calm aisle suggests. Every single bottle on your shelf is a small, dense, easily concealed unit of value, and that fact alone reshapes your entire risk profile. Industry data puts shrinkage, meaning theft, breakage and administrative loss combined, at roughly 2 to 4% of revenue for a typical liquor store. That sounds small until you run it against your actual margin. A store doing $1 million a year, at a 12% net margin, nets $120,000. Shrinkage at 3% is $30,000. A quarter of your entire year's profit, quietly walking out the door, one bottle and one price tag switch at a time. And it concentrates in exactly the products that make the store profitable in the first place. Premium spirits carry markups as high as 55%, and premium spirits are exactly what a thief targets. Stores that keep shrinkage under 1.5% are not luckier than everyone else. They are running cameras on every high-value shelf, locking the premium spirits behind glass, and take a single bottle of premium vodka retailing near $40. Lose a case of 12 to theft in a month, and that alone is close to $500 gone before the month even ends. Multiply that across every high-turnover premium SKU on the shelf, and shrinkage stops being a rounding error and starts being a second rent payment. The ones that do not are effectively subsidizing theft out of a margin that was already thin to begin with. Now the second risk, and it is really the mirror image of the first advantage. The same government that granted your license controls every condition under which you keep it, and those conditions can tighten with almost no warning. Hours of sale, days of sale, proximity to schools or churches, advertising restrictions, all of it can shift by a single legislative session, and none of it is a control state can decide to loosen or tighten its own monopoly on spirits sales entirely, instantly changing who is even allowed to compete. You do not simply own a retail business. You own a business whose entire legal existence is a revocable government permission, renewed on the government's schedule, not yours. Miss a renewal deadline, fail a compliance inspection, or run afoul of a sales to minors violation, and in some states that license can be suspended or revoked entirely. In a quota market, a revoked license does not just cost you a fine. It can erase the single largest asset on your balance sheet in one administrative decision. Alright, numbers. Two versions of the same industry. Scenario 1. You buy a store in an open state, no meaningful license premium, in a competitive suburban strip mall. $1 million in annual revenue, at a 9% net margin, is $90,000 a year to the owner. You paid perhaps $150,000 all in, mostly for fixtures and inventory. That is sell the business in 5 years, at 2.5 to 3 times owner earnings, and you get roughly $250,000. A fine outcome. Nothing more. That multiple almost never moves much, no matter how well you run the store, because in an open state, anyone else can simply apply for a license and open across the street. Your competitive advantage was never structural. It was execution, and execution alone rarely commands a premium multiple. Scenario 2. You buy a similar-sized store in a Florida moratorium county, where no new licenses have been issued in years. Same $1 million in revenue. Same $90,000 of net income. But the purchase price is $700,000, and $400,000 of that is the license itself, priced separately in the deal documents. Your operating return looks worse on paper, closer to 13%, because you paid so much more to get in. But 5 years later, county population has grown, the quota has not moved, and the license alone, the same physical piece of paper, now appraises at $600,000. You did not sell more bottles. You did not improve the margin. The scarcity did the work for you, the entire time you were simply running the store day to day. The gap between those two outcomes was never about better retailing. It was about which side of a quota line the address happened to sit on. Run the same operator, with the same skill and the same effort, through both scenarios, and the license location alone accounts for nearly all the difference in outcome. So who is this business for? The retail operator who wants steady cash flow, tight inventory control, and real skill at minimizing shrinkage can absolutely make a 9 to 15% business out of the bottles alone. But the operator who understands the license as a second, separate, appreciating asset, sitting inside the same 4 walls, is playing an entirely different game, with the exact same inventory on the exact same shelves. The bottles were never really the business. They were the daily cash flow that justified holding on to the one asset in the building that the government will not let anyone else have.